Hey, happy July, everybody. This is Donald from Donald Plays. I thought for this episode we'd do something a little special. So, to kind of celebrate 4th of July, instead of doing a normal episode, which I'm in the progress of taking on the mammoth game Skyrim and trying to do all the main quests and explore and get the most out of the game that I can for the channel. I thought that we'd actually take a little time and pause, and so far we've enjoyed the journey. We've been learning about the lore on the way, and there's a lot of great channels that capture all of the lore and extensively, and it isn't like just the Elder Scrolls lore in general is mammoth. It's super in depth. Like I mentioned before, one channel I highly recommend is Fudge Muppet. They do a really good job of summing up the lore of Elder Scrolls in general. But I would say, to give us personally on my channel a little bit of background into the world, I thought that we'd delve a bit into Skyrim lore, just Skyrim itself. So I thought we'd go over what they have on the Elder Scrolls Wiki and just kind of get more acquainted with the world that we're in, and that way we feel as we explore for the rest of the game, we'll have a little bit more grounding as into the politics and the just the general geography and everything in regards to um, uh, Skyrim, this particular game out of the Elder Scrolls series. So let's get started. Skyrim, also known as the Old Kingdom, Throat of the World, the Fatherland, or Khazal, this is a dragon language, meaning Rebellion May, is a vast region set in the northern part of Tamriel. And Tamriel is all of the Elder Scrolls world, so all the different lands. It is home to the Nords, large and hardy men and women who have a strong resistance to frost, both natural and magical. Nords are kind of like take a lot of influence and cues from kind of the Scandinavian countries in Europe, and particularly the Vikings. Strong resistance to frost, both natural and magical. Skyrim was originally inhabited by a race of Myr, known as Snow Elves. The Myr are the elf kind, and we met some Snow Elves, so very interesting. Even though after the Nordic Falmer War, the Snow Elves were mostly destroyed by the Atmorons settled, and the Atmorons settled the land. It is bordered by Morrowind to the east, Nibene and Colovia and Cyrodiil to the south, Hammerfell to the southwest, High Rock to the west, and the island of Solstein lies northeast of Skyrim. I think Morrowind is that land of the Dark Elves or the Dunmer. Nibene and Colovia and Cyrodiil. Cyrodiil is the Imperial peoples. Hammerfell is the Red Guards, and High Rock is the Bretons, I believe. The island of Solstheim lies in the northeast of Skyrim, now a sovereign territory of Morrowind. Alright, the Nords, the people of Skyrim. The Nords are a race of men native to Skyrim. Nords consider themselves to be children of the sky. They call Skyrim the throat of the world because it was where the sky first brought the north winds upon land and formed them. Breath and voice are the vital essence of a Nord. The art of breathing, speech, and articulation is with them. I'd have a hard time then. Not the best at breathing, but apparently they're very hardy. They got that fresh mountain air, and they really value the control of breath. Though the art of speech is usually associated with the goddess Dilabella, the art of Thu'um, or storm voice, is associated with Kynareth, who gave men the ability to speak. Reachmen. Reachmen are a race native to the Reach. They share ancestry with many of the human and Myr, and can be traced back when both first began breeding within the Western Reach. They were also believed to have interbred with Daedra. So pretty crazy. Daedra are like the demons of Skyrim. So the Reachmen having ancestry with both humans and Myr and Daedra is very peculiar, very unusual to Tamriel, let alone Skyrim. It just seems unlikely in Skyrim, but apparently that the reach men are there. So very interesting. During the Murthic era, a legendary Atmoran leader named Ysgramor led an expedition from Atmora across the Sea of Ghosts to the land that would later be known as Skyrim. They called the land Merith in recognition of the vast number of Mer that lived there. It was the first region of Tamriel to be settled by humans. According to the legend, Ysgramor landed first at Hazaric Head at the extreme northern tip of Skyrim's Broken Cap. It is said that he and his companions were fleeing the civil war at Mora, which at that time had a sizable population. The Atmarans settled the area that in the future would be known as Winterhold. They eventually built a city in the region named Sarthal. For a long time, relations between the Snow Elves and the Atmarans were relatively peaceful. So I'm just going to go back here real quick and click on Atmaran. Atmarans are the ancient race of men who originated from the continent Atmora, located north of Skyrim. They are considered the progenitors of the Nords, and subsequently the Imperials and Bretons. Okay, so the Atmarans are actually, they settled and became the Nords, and so the Atmarans are kind of like humans that came and settled and then changed, and once they occupied the region, changed their title to Nords, and probably evolved to adapt to the kind of wintry landscape in which they lived. So let's see. They called the land Merith in recognition of the vast number of Mer that lived there. It was the first region of Tamriel to be settled by humans. Interesting. So the Atmarans, like Skyrim, is the first place that they came to before they branched out and became other human races like the Imperials and the Bretons. It's just very interesting. According to legend, Ysgramor landed first at Hazaric Head at the extreme northern tip of Skyrim's Broken Cap. It is said that he and his companions were fleeing the civil war at Atmora, which at the time had a sizable population. The Atmarans settled the area that in the future would be known as Winterhold. Yep, they eventually built a region named Sarthal. For a long time, the relations. So we've already been over this, but yeah, like the Atmarans, the first city, if you guys remember Winterhold from the game, that's the first Nord settlement. The settlement the Atmarans settled when humans first came to Skyrim, and then the Atmarans later changed their title to Nords, and that was the capital city, and that's why that's kind of the Stormcloak stronghold, so to speak. The Night of Tears. The Night of Tears is the infamous sacking of Sarthal by Snow Elves. There are a variety of accounts to why this happened. Some say the Snow Elves saw that the Nords, with their considerably shorter life expectancy, fast rates of physical maturation, and expedient by Elvish standards reproductive cycle, would eventually overtake them if left unchecked. Another theory suggests that the sacking of Sarthal was brought on by the Atmaran discovering the Eye of Magnus, which we've encountered. We actually have the Staff of the Eye of Magnus, which is pretty interesting. We have a little bit of history that we just have lying around our house somewhere beneath the city. Other sources are less certain of their pronouncements, but also point to a very focused attack on locations that are not of strategic importance, lending the weight of the theory that the Eye of Magnus, not the extermination of the Nords, was the primary reason for the attack. According to legend, only Ysgramor and his two sons were able to escape back to Atmora. When Ysgramor and his sons returned to Atmora, they told stories of the events that occurred in Skyrim, and gathered many around them for the return to retake Skyrim and avenge Sarthal. After Ysgramor was set to return to Skyrim with an army known as the 500 Companions, composed of the heroes of Atmaran's Civil War. I wonder if that's the fighter guilds calls themselves the Companions in Whiterun. I wonder if they're heralding back to this historic event. On the day of the final passage, the 500 companions left the port of some kind of Norwegian, funky, Scandinavian sounding name, Jaikurvjuk, to return to Skyrim. The Nordic Falmer War, so the Falmer invaded Winterhold and started a war. And the Falmer are the same as the Snow Elves. The Nordic Falmer War took place in the Middle Myrthic era, and it was a campaign which seemed to be indecisive for much of its duration. The battle that decided for the Atmorians was the battle at Mosring. During the battle, the Atmorians were winning, and it appeared that they'd be victorious until the arrival of the Snow Prince. He rallied and led his troops into combat, inspiring them of the last remaining army of Snow Elves before allegedly being killed by a small child. The death of the Snow Prince, who shattered the morale and motivation of the remaining Snow Elf warriors. Many Snow Elves fled, and those who remained in the battlefield were killed. The Snow Prince himself was buried with honor by his Nord foes. Yeah, so I guess the Falmor's lead person was killed by a Nord child. It's pretty intense. The war would end shortly after, and that's why is there a child in battle? I guess the Nords are like hardcore. I don't know if I'd have to learn more about Viking lore, but I wouldn't be surprised if they took much younger children with them on their pillaging to learn how to the trade and whatnot, and to be a warrior. The war would end shortly after, and was followed by a purge of Skyrim's remaining Snow Elves. The 500 companions, without much resistance, secured the region and laid the foundations of the Ysgramor dynasty. War against the giant clans of Sinmor. Ysgramor and his 500 companions not only fought the Snow Elves, but also the giants. You guys have seen the giants in Skyrim. It's pretty intense. After many hundreds were slain in battle, the giant of legend, Sinmor, was cornered in his barrow and fought Ysgramor to the death. However, the giant was no match for Ysgramor's mighty axe, Wuthal. The axe was driven to Sinmor's skull after he was brought to his knees by Ysgramor. With the death of Sinmor, the giants were never as mighty a threat and so the war ended. Yeah, you see giants kind of out and about, and like I've never really seen two giants together. So I'm sure that there might be a tiny clan of giants, but on the whole, they seem to be kind of hermetic and seem to be out in the in their own, doing their own thing, very much individualistically, and they don't seem to have much of a society. They seem to just kind of wander, and maybe the height of their society is building a cave and herding mammoths and kind of acting as shepherds, maybe. But they don't seem to be a force that they used to be in Skyrim. Founding of Whiterun. After the war against Snow Elves, the 500 companions broke into separate groups to find their way into the newly conquered land. The crew of Jorbasker, led by Jeek of the River, journeyed around Skyrim until they came across a mysterious yet wondrous sight, a monument of a bird whose eyes and beak were open in flame. This monument would soon to be later known as the Skyforge. It was older than the Snow Elves themselves. It was supposedly as old as the Nirn, and was some remnant of the gods' efforts to render a paradise in Mundus before the shattering of Lorkhan. Mundus is like the reality of like Elder Scrolls term for reality. So all Tamriel exists in reality, so it exists in Mundus. I'm not sure what Lorkhan is also known as the Doom Drum, the Elven name for a missing god. Interesting. Mostly associated with the existence of the mortal plane. A city was built up around Jorvesker, and the city became known as Whiterun. The initial area around it later known as Whiterun Hold. The founding of Windhelm. So Winterhold, okay. I'm sorry about the confusion. Winterhold is actually where the college is. So where our college is at is actually the first city in Skyrim. Windhelm is the capital of Skyrim right now, and that's the large city that we remember. Winterhold's kind of a small town right now, with the exception of the college, which is the college is like monolithic compared to like Winterhold and most structures in most of the towns. But yeah. So actually, Winterhold was the first settlement, and Windhelm, which is now the capital where the Stormcloaks are concentrating, it became a Nord, highly Nord area. I think it's the capital of Skyrim, but we'll find out if it says or not. Ysgramor and his group traveled eastwards, heading towards Yingol Barrow. After stopping there, Ysgramor's eyes turned to the south, where a river met the sea. He decreed that he and his crew would build a great city and monument to the glories of mankind, and so that he could look upon his son's final resting place and feel that his line would know the peace and this new home that was never known in Atmora. The city was built with a long bridge stretching across the White River, with much of the city made of stone. The city would be known as Windhelm, or City of Kings. The Dragon War. So, and we have a little quote here. When the populace rebelled, the dragon priest retaliated. When the dragon priest could not collect tribute or control the masses, the dragon's response was swift and brutal, and so it was the Dragon War began. The Dragon War by Torhall Wodarchik. On the beginning of Dragon War, the Atmorans came to Atmorians. Atmorians? The Atmorans? The Atmorans? Atmorians? The Atmorians came to Skyrim. They brought with them their history and culture, including their religion. Their religion focused on the worship of animal gods, the chief deity, which was the dragon. Just as dragons ruled supreme in Atmoria, with dragon priests being their lieutenants, to whom actual governance is left, the same occurred in Tamriel. At unknown time, the people of Skyrim rebelled against the dragons. At first, people died by the thousands. Later, Kine, the Nordic goddess of storm, intervened to help mankind. She gave Parthurax the task of teaching mankind the voice. Pathurax is the dragon language. Pathurax actually is sometimes referred to as the Old One, is an ancient dragon who resides in Skyrim. He serves as leader of the Greybeards, noted surpassing others in his mastery of the way of the voice. Yeah, pretty cool. The tide began to turn in the favor of man, and eventually dragons were hunted down, and the cultists were killed or overthrown. So, it looks like one of the gods intervened and had an ancient dragon. Was he just ancient, or was he also... Okay. Yeah, she had an ancient dragon teach them the dragon language, and help them win the war. The tide began to turn in the favor of man, and eventually dragons were hunted down, and the cultists were killed or overthrown. The Atmorans solidified their victory after Hakon One-Eyed Felder the Old and Gormlaith Goldenhilt seemingly vanquished the Dragon Lord Aldun. Mankind would win the Dragon War, and with many dragons killed and the remnants of the dragon cult dispersing and going into hiding, what was left of the dragon cult built the dragon mounds, entombing themselves in the remains of the dragons that died during the war, with the belief that Aldun would one day return and resurrect the faithful. And it's really interesting because now where we come in the beginning of the game, we saw dragon, and the way people were reacting to it, people hadn't seen dragon in centuries. So it was very interesting to see that we're part of history is resurrecting itself with the dragons returning. The split with the First Era, the split with Atmora. Snow Elves persisted within the borders of Skyrim until the reign of the 13th of Ysgramor dynasty, King Harald, at the beginning of the First Era. King Harald was the first to relinquish all holdings in Atmora, proclaiming the people of Skyrim as independent, as until that time the Nords of Atmora and Skyrim had been considered the same group. Verge the Gifted started the expansion that would eventually lead to the First Empire of Men. Within 50 years of his reign, the Nords ruled all of Skyrim as well as parts of High Rock, Cyrodiil, and the Dunward lands of Morrowind. The acquisition of Morrowind was particularly bloody and can be remembered by the Dunmer. The purpose of the formation of the Chimmer Dwemer, Kingdom of Resdan, was to expel the Nords. War of Succession. And First Era, so whenever I see 1E, I know how to reference because I feel bad because I was like, what does that mean? So yeah, first era. So they date by eras. So the First Era, 369, High King Borgus was killed during the Wild Hunt. His death led to the start of Skyrim's War of Succession. The War of Succession caused Skyrim's influence over many of its dominions to wane. The Durrani hegemony took advantage of this internal strife in Skyrim and began taking land north and south and south of High Rock, even claiming portions of Skyrim at certain moments. The First Battle of Red Mountain in First Era 416, the discord produced by the War of Succession greatly weakened the Nords and caused them to be expelled from Morrowind during the First Battle of Red Mountain. The Second Battle of Red Mountain and First Era 700, the Nords lost all their territory in Morrowind, and their army suffered huge casualties at the hands of combined Chimmer-Dwemer army. And the Dwemer are the dwarves. The Chimmer, I'm not sure. The Chimmer are the changed folk. They're ancestors of the modern Dunmer. So they're not quite the Dunmer, but they're the ancestors of the Dunmer, and the Dunmer are the Dark Elves. War of Succession ends. Subdued the foul dragon Numenex, reunited Skyrim after War of Succession, and conquered the barbarous Reach, Windhelm Palace of King's Plaque. In First Era 420, the Skyrim War of Succession ended with the Pact of Chieftains and the crowning of Olaf One-Eye as king. Records indicated that Olaf expanded Skyrim's boundaries when he conquered the Reach. Following Olaf's reign, the Crown of Verity was created to ensure that the Moot would select a ruler worthy enough to rule Skyrim. The crown caused controversy when it rejected the Moot's choice of king, Azum Icebreaker. Following this rejection, Azurn was then killed by Azurn Icebreaker by Korjik the White, who took the crown for himself. I'm gonna just end up. You guys know like these names are tough. Like you have to kind of. I bet you people that are from Scandinavia love this game because I feel like a lot of the pronunciation in Skyrim is derivative of Scandinavian languages, so you probably can actually pronounce some of these names correctly. Let's see. The War of Righteousness. Relations soured with Cyrodiil when Korjik rebelled against Emperor Gorius and the Elysian army, but was killed at the Battle of Sungard in First Era 477 or 478. They even have like discrepancies like in real history where it's like, yeah, I think the dates are between X and X, and that's like this game. This game is intense as far as it's a devotion to its own history, the Elder Scrolls history. This is just one of their games, one of their regions in Tamriel. Is super in depth. His son here, Hog Merkiller, resented the Elysian Order so much that he allied with Durrani hegemony and King Raisliflark's insurgents on their war against the Order. Hog was killed at the Battle of Glen Numbra Moors, and successor Wulfharth continued his predecessor's work in devastating Elysian Order. King Wulfharth reestablished the Nordic pantheon as the mainstream faith in Skyrim, drove the Durrani hegemony from Skyrim, and waged war against the Orcs. Legend has it that Wolfhearth drew the ire of the orcs' god Orki, and that he had the ghosts of Aldun Time Eater to reduce all the Nords aged to 6. Yikes. Wolfgar pleaded with Shor to aid them, and supposedly Shor's own ghost fought with the Time Eater on the spirit plane, as he did at the beginning of time, and won. Orki's followers, the orcs, were ruined by this act. Wolfhearth watched the battle in the sky and learned the new Thuum that would change his people back to normal. But in haste to save so many, he shook too many years on himself. He grew older than the Greybeards themselves and died. Allegedly, Wolfhearth would later be resurrected as Shor's avatar and unite the sons of Skyrim to invade Morrowind and reclaim the heart of Lorkhan. The initial battles for the Nords were devastating after making landfall, although they thought the Dwemer and Chimera armies would be weaker with reports of them warring on each other. They were surprised to be beset by both armies. Believing that Shor's army would need all the strength it could muster, Wolfhearth has also allied himself with the Orcish clans and House Dagoth in his holy war, much to the vexation of some Nords who still clung to old hatreds. Some tales claimed Vorn Dagoth deceived Wolfhearth and the Nords into believing that he was an ally, and betrayed the sons of Skyrim by leading them into a combined Dwemer-Chimera ambush. Other tales claim that Wolfhearth's Nords deserted him when he allied himself with their traditional enemies and fled the climatic battle with the combined Dwemer-Chimera army. Ultimately, Wolfhearth died at the Battle of Red Mountain in First Era 700, either by being weakened by Dumak and slain by Indoril Nervar, or blasted away into ashes by Vivek. The tribunal, I think Vivek is a dark elf deity. Vivek, the warrior poet, also known as Vivek, later Saint Vivek, was one of the 3 immortal god kings of Morrowind alongside. Yep. Sometime we'll, if you guys like Skyrim, eventually, I doubt I'll undertake a game this exceptionally in-depth and vast as Skyrim again anytime soon. But, yeah, eventually it'd be cool to take on Morrowind, because that game has got such a amazing lore. Let me know if you guys like the Elder Scrolls series, and if so, if you have any interest in any of the other games. That being said, like after Skyrim, I'm probably going to take a long break from super expansive RPGs like this. But it is very fascinating, and this is one of those once in a lifetime kind of RPGs that you come across that is super unique and very in depth and well worth playing, and just super cool, super in depth, super. It's an experience. The tribunal wrestled with Kagranek's tools in the heart of Lorkhan from Lorn Dagoth, and then used them to give themselves divine powers. Unbeknownst to them, Lorn Dagoth did not die from the conflict, but had secretly connected himself to the heart, long ago turning into Dagothur and becoming a divine being himself. Interesting. Second Era. While the Akabari Potentate saw the decline and disintegration of much of the Second Empire, Skyrim was one of the most rebellious provinces in this respect, destroying a fortress at Dawnstar, which catechized the Potentate to crush all their large-scale armed forces on Tamriel. During this period, Skyrim maintained most of its own structure, with the moot continuings of elected kings and functioning largely independently. Virdu Shah and his son, King Lorgroth, was the last High King during the Potentate and was assassinated in Second Era 431. The Internregum. So, yeah. Following Lorgroth's assassination, the crown chose his daughter, Freydis, as High Queen, and this was disputed by Savartur, Jarl of Solitude, who held a partial moot to proclaim himself High King in the West, signaling the split of Skyrim into 2 kingdoms. Yavatar was unable to keep an influx of orcs fleeing the recent destruction of Orsinium out of his realm, and the chieftain Yaznegro Yazgu, along with increasingly rebellious reachmen, was a disruptive presence in the west for several decades. Although some sources claim this was confined to Falkreath, this was ultimately ended in Second Era 467 when Hackvild slew Yashnag in single combat. Without a leader, the orcs scattered into the Rothgarian mountains. That kind of makes sense. We don't see a lot of orcs in Skyrim. They do have some strongholds, but they're not a very prominent presence. The second Akavari invasion of Tamriel. The second Akavari invasion landed east of Windhelm in Second Era 572. Rather than landing in the east of Morrowind, the leader was the king of the Kamal Adusum Dir Kamal. They sacked Windhelm and killed Queen Mabjarn and Nirnhild, her heir. Jorhun, her younger son, either escaped the sack or was in Riften and came to Windhelm as the gates fell. In response to the invasion, the Ebonheart Pact is formed. Johann rallied the troops from across the eastern Skyrim, including summoning the spirit of Wolfhearth. So the original, one of the pivotal characters in the first era, to help the Nords. Following the return of Jorun, now calling himself King Jorun, at least I think he was first era. Yeah. Yep. Following the return of Jorun, now calling himself King Jorun, the Nords held Akavari at bay while the Dunmer approached from the east and cornered the Akavari at Stone Falls, and supplemented by a legion of Aragonians drove the Akavari into the sea. Other accounts claims that Jorun the Filgor Strong Prince arrived at the battle at the same time, and following the invasion, dueled for the kingship of the eastern Skyrim to avoid civil war. After 3 hours of fighting, Jorun reemerged victorious and banished Filgor, who fled into the Daggerfall Covenant. 10 years after the formation of the pact, Jorun is noted to be at its head. The Battle of Sancretor, and Second Era 852, an allied force of Nords and Bretons occupied the fortress of Sancretor in the Geralt Mountains in northern Cyrodiil, which was then besieged by Talos and the authority of King Cuchulainn, and defeated through the Breton treachery. Following the battle, the Nords swore allegiance to Tiber Septim. Tiber Septim is a huge character in the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, and he's an emperor in Cyrodiil and Imperial Empire emperor, and yeah, he has Patrick. They have Patrick Stewart voice in Oblivion, so it's pretty epic. And during the efforts to conquer Cyrodiil, note that available texts regarding the battle do not say that this was the point where Skyrim joined the Second Empire, merely that Nordic troops joined the Cyrodiilic army. Reunification. There is no documented account on how or why Skyrim was reunified, but it had presumably been a single entity for some time when the first pocket guide to the Empire was published in Second Era 864 as its division, and unification does not merit mention in the text. Also, another possibility is that the Imperial Geographic Society had some motive to hide the fact that their kingdom was ever divided. It was also likely that Tiber Septim reunified Skyrim through his actions at Sancretor in Second Era 852. The Wolf Queen. I've seen a book called The Wolf Queen. Princess Fatima, child of Pelagius II, was known to Temurelic history as the Wolf Queen, was married to King Manticore, noted as King of Solitude, and Third Era 82. When she was 14, she had her first child. Yikes. Different times, different world, I guess. Kind of very creepy, very disturbing. Uriel, after many miscarriages in the intervening years, she had spent much time gaining the alliance of all other Skyrim nobility. I think like if they're hailed to like humans like in medieval times, like I don't know about 14, but like people would get married younger in medieval times because people like only lived to be 30, like depending on how what era of history, like even especially pre even medieval times, like there are different eras in history that people would live, like you're lucky if you live to 30 because if you didn't die from a plague or a disease, you would work yourself to death or be killed by an invading army or a wild animal. It's nuts. But yeah, so I don't know, maybe this is still like pretty early. She spent much of the time, or a lot of women in miscarriage. Miscarriage is a big, or they would die during miscarriage, or they deliver the child and die while giving birth. A lot of like very, tough times. Tough times. She initially attempted to be an empress herself by forging a letter by her brother, claiming he knew, claiming she knew he was a bastard, but she was discovered. Following this, Potima and her son Uriel attempted to have her brother's heir, Kintra, declared a bastard before coordinating several attacks on the Empire across Skyrim and High Rock, and ultimately a successful attack on the Imperial City in Third Era 121. These initial attacks resulted in the Empress Kintra's capture in the Third Era 121, an execution at Glenpoint Castle in High Rock, and Uriel proclaiming himself Uriel Septim III. This triggered the War of the Red Diamond. The War of the Red Diamond lasted for 6 years between the rival claimants. Uriel was captured after the Battle of Ichidog and Hammerfell and Third Era 127 and killed by a mob while traveling to Cyrodiil for trial. Following this, Potima's allies deserted her and swore loyalty to Sephiroth, while Potima summoned Daedra and raised undead meshing with some evil forces to save her dwindling armies in the next years, so she must have been pretty desperate. After a 3-year siege of her castle in Solitude, the Wolf Queen was declared dead in Third Era 137. So did she die from the siege, or did the Daedra she summoned kill her, or did they, I was curious. The Oblivion Crisis. At the beginning of the 5th century of the Third Era, the Oblivion Crisis began with Mehrunes Dagon's attempt to enter Tamriel. And Mehrunes Dagon, actually, that's the dagger we're trying to get, is the dagger for the museum before we start building our house, is Mehrunes Dagon's. So very interesting. Well, that'll be the next mission that we get to. In its true and terrible form, Oblivion Gates opened up all over Tamriel. The massive war between mortals and Daedra ensued. Though most of the fighting took place in Cyrodiil, it is known that the Oblivion Gates opened up all across Tamriel. So even in Skyrim, apparently. The Red Year and its aftermath. Untithed to any thane or hold, and self-governed with free worship and no compensation to Skyrim or the Empire, except as in writ the armistice of old, wheresoever those might still apply, and henceforth let no man or mer say that the sons and daughters of Cain are without mercy or honor. Skyrim's offer of Solstheim to Morrowind in 4th Era 16. So we're in the 4th Era now. And Solstheim was is the island between Skyrim and Morrowind, which is Morrowind is the Dark Elves, also known as the Dunmer, and the Skyrim are the Nords, the human Nords. Red Mountain had erupted in Morrowind. Much land was destroyed, and as such, many Dunmer were forced to flee their homeland. From 4th Era 6 to 4th Era 16, the High King of Skyrim gave the island of Solstheim to the Dunmer, giving the refugees coming from Morrowind a place to live. 4 years later, in 4th Era 20, the decree of monument was signed by the Jarls to decree the site as a monument to the struggle of those who fled their native home to the Morrowind in the time of Red Year. So there's history is complex and people are complex, and people are always changing. And alliances are changing. People, the way people feel about things are always changing. History is like a river that is, can some places in the river are very calm and peaceful and just a slow steady flow. In other areas there's rapids and intensity, and it's kind of like that, because like right now in Windhelm, there's some racial tensions going on between the Nords and the Dark Elves, also known as the Dunmer and the Grey Quarter, and they call them Greys. And so there's some tension right now, but back in the day, when the Dark Elves were fleeing the eruption of Red Mountain, the humans, the Nords, gave them the same Nords, their ancestors, gave them a place to live, signed over one of their islands, so that the Dark Elves could weather the storm and return to their homeland when the volcanic activity was over. So pretty cool. So it shows that Nords are complex, and there's a lot of different reasons why divisions happen. But this is a moment in history where they showed mercy to their neighbors. See, the Forsworn Uprising, and that's something that we encounter later in the game. It's one of the main missions. So this will give us a little background. 4th Era 174, a group of Reachmen launched an uprising in which they took the city of Markarth, an event that would later be known as the Forsworn Uprising. Since the Empire was fighting against the Third Ultimary Dominion in Cyrodiil at the time, Markarth was undefended and was thus open for attack, and the Reachmen, who took control of Markarth, took over the government administration and created an independent Reach Kingdom. The Markarth Incident. 2 years later, in 4th Era 176, Holderfer, who was the Jarl of Markarth prior to the Reachmen reclaiming it, asked for a militia led by Ulfric Stormcloak. So now we're getting into the modern era, which is really interesting. So we're in the 4th Era. So we were on the cart. Like, the guy that was going to get executed but escaped was Ulfric Stormcloak of the Stormcloaks, who was trying to retake Skyrim from the Imperials and give it back to the Nords. So that's who they're referencing, to retake Markarth, and Markarth is a city in Skyrim. The militia was victorious, however, for many people who were related to the Forsworn were executed. Those of the Forsworn who didn't flee Markarth were killed, except for Mad Grenak, Nepos the Nose, and a handful of others. Those of the Forsworn who did manage to escape swore revenge against the Nords for preventing them a lifetime of independence. After this, the Imperial Legion returned and had to accept the agreement of free Talos worship, which was made between Ulfric the Holderfer, supposedly due to the chaos running through the streets of Markarth. However, sometime after this, the Thalmor found out the Emperor wasn't honoring the white gold concordant and demanded them that Ulfric and his men be arrested or face another war. So the Thalmor are kind of manipulating the Empire, and the Thalmor are the High Elves, and they're manipulating the Empire to force the Stormcloaks to not worship Nordic gods, but to worship High Elf gods. And that's very interesting, because that's definitely like religion. There's like a handful of things that people will be hard set to die for. I think one of them is family. If you have a family and you feel strongly about your family, your wife and kids, and religion is another big one, because that dictates for a lot of people what their perception of eternity will be like, or life after death, and the idea of eternity. So this trying to force conversion, this created a lot of tension, and that's part of why the Stormcloaks are uprising, I'm guessing, is because they aren't allowed to worship their gods. Well, we were arrested, and the Thalmor came to Skyrim with their treaty enforcers. The Thalmor Justicars to ensure that the Talos band wouldn't be dishonored again. Is the founding day for the Stormcloaks, or the Civil War in Skyrim truly starts. So later on, there will be a quest in the game where we engage in the Civil War. So now we're getting into a really interesting part of history, because we're living in it. The Skyrim Civil War, when the sons of Skyrim would spill their own blood. Isburn, describing the Skyrim Civil War. The Civil War in Skyrim is known to have started before 4th Era 199 and after 4th Era 176. The exact cause for the war is a matter of debate in the province. On the Imperial side, it is generally thought that Ulfric coveted the High King's throne, and he just wanted to become the High King of Skyrim. On the Stormcloak side, however, the people see him as a liberator who tries to free Skyrim from the claws of a corrupt and dying empire. Whiterun is neutral in the war, and its Curl Jarl, Ulrich the Greater, claims that he will stay that way until the Hold is forced to draw its sword against one side or the other. There hasn't been any record of any significant clashes in the Civil War prior to the last Dragonborn arriving in Skyrim, save from a few skirmishes outside of Windhelm, Whiterun, and Skyrim in general. As a result, not too much territory has been gained by either side. So, yeah, we'll be changing that. We'll be changing the landscape of Skyrim when we join the Civil War quest. Very interesting. The Dragon Crisis, which we were there from the inception of it. The Dragon Crisis was a series of events that occurred in 4th Era 201 when Aldun, the Nordic god of destruction, returned to Tamriel. He, along with many dragons that he resurrected, caused destruction chaos throughout Skyrim, already in strife from the Skyrim Civil War. However, a mysterious individual, later revealed hero of legend, last Dragonborn, rose up and was able to do... Shh! Haven't gotten to that part yet. But, it's for history. Rose up and was able to defeat Alduin, as foretold by the Elder Scrolls. So yeah, we also have a Dragonborn quest that we have to go on where we defeat the King of the Dragons. So pretty cool. If you thought the Vampire quest was insane and Mage quest was insane, the Dragon quest is off the charts. Geography. Skyrim was the most rugged region of Tamriel, not only containing 5 of the highest peaks on the continent, but also very snowy and cold. Much of Skyrim is vertical mountains, cliffs, and deep valleys. A vast majority of settlements cling to these valleys. Flora. A vast number of types of flora are found throughout Skyrim. Plants can be found almost anywhere in Skyrim. We've been collecting plants for alchemy throughout the entire game. That's pretty neat. And the least hospitable of locations, flora such as snowberries and frostmirium are capable of surviving in cold, harsh conditions. There's a lot of fungi. Yeah, there are 9 types of fungi found in Skyrim. These can be found in cave networks beneath the surface. Particular note are Jezbay grapes, originally a rare delicacy, tundra cotton, alternative to clothing fiber into animal skins, and bleeding crown, a fungus common in many of Skyrim's caverns. One of the most intriguing plants in Skyrim is the Nirnroot plant, which we actually have quite a collection. Nirnroot typically grows near fungi and water resources and depends on water and sunlight to survive. This plant is light green or crimson and emits a very bright glow, as well as a chiming sound. Nirnroot flourished on Skyrim and all of Tamriel until the event known as Sunstep in First Era 668, which catastrophically affected almost all plant life, including Nirnroot. Fauna. A number of animals can be found in Skyrim are domesticated. These include dogs, horses, chickens, cows, and goats. The horses of Skyrim are hardy and strong and make up for endurance with the lack in speed. Horses and horse-drawn carriages are commonly used as methods of transportation, both being capable of traveling the harsh terrain and climate with ease. Is that a frostbite spider? Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff, and like the giant rats and spiders, though, that are also in Skyrim. Holds are the 9 administrative sections of Skyrim. Scattered throughout the rugged landscape in Skyrim are 5 major cities and 4 minor ones, as well as minor settlements. The Pale. The Pale is located in the central northern area of Skyrim and extends to the northern coast where Dawnstar is situated. The Hold borders... so these right now are the... different areas of Skyrim. So we have the Pale is located in the central northern area of Skyrim. It extends to the northern coast where Dawnstar is situated. Dawnstar is where that museum is at that we were visiting. The Hold borders Hellmarch to the west, Whiterun to the south, Winterhold and Eastmarch to the east. Most of the region is treacherously cold with pine forests that stand facing harsh winds whipping down the mountains. Only in the southernmost parts of the hold towards Whiterun does the harsh terrain abate and become grassy plains. Dawnstar, a garrison town in the northern coast of Skyrim, the port of Dawnstar is the trade center of the region, once the location of a major imperial fortress until its destruction in Second Era 283. Dawnstar is one of the northernmost cities in Skyrim, along with Solitude and Winterhold. Valkreath Hold. Valkreath Hold is where we met the dog that was the familiar to the Daedric Prince of Wishes. The Valkreath Hold is the second southernmost hold in Skyrim, along with Rift. It borders Cyrodiil to the south via the Pale Pass and Hammerfell to the west, with a single road leading to both provinces. Its capital is the city of Falkreath, and the epicenter of the region. The other notable town in the hold is Helgen, the first settlement in Skyrim to be attacked by the dragon during the Dragon Crisis. Lake Ilternalta, the biggest lake in the province. I think Helgen. I think that was where we were going to get executed. I don't quote me on it, but I think. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, this is where we were about to get executed and the dragon showed up. So we were there for the sacking of the first city by the dragon in the Dragon Crisis. Lake Ilnalta, the biggest lake of the province, covers a large portion of the northwest part of the hold. It feeds the White River, the Dural Mountains, and covers Falkreath's southern border, and the eastern part holds the Features Mountains adjacent to the throat of the world. Falkreath, a smaller city. Falkreath is situated in one of the southernmost roads in Skyrim and is not far from the province's southern border. The city has been a site for many historical battles. Given its history, the city is known for its large cemetery, which dominates the southern part of town. The Reach. The Reach covers much of the western border of Skyrim. With High Rock and Hammerfell to the west, its mountainous region is dotted with juniper trees and rich and valuable ores, especially silver. Surrounding holds include Whiterun to the east, Halfingar past the mountains to the north, Hellsmarch to the northeast, and Falkreath to the southeast. The Reach is infamous for harboring Forsworn Reachmen who are fighting a long war of independence and seek to retake Markarth from the Nords and free the hold from Imperial authority. And the Reachmen are like the human Daedra hybrids, so very bizarre. Markarth. Nothing ever changes in the City of Stone, and that's just fine. Settled within the westerly Druidic Mountains on the Reach, Markarth is the capital city of the hold. Markarth was notable for possessing Imperial College of the Voice, which was founded by Typer Septon to destroy the voice to the art of warfare. Half the town is controlled by a wealthy family known as the Silverbloods. Violence runs rampant through most of the city due to the Forsworn and government corruption. Originally known as the Schunzel, the city's architecture is primarily Dwemer in style. Yeah, we haven't visited Markarth yet, but it's very fascinating. It's got basically built in Dwemer ruins, so dwarven ruins. So that type of architecture makes it very interesting city. The city features significant elevation to change within its limits, as well as a pair of rivers flowing through it. Hellsmarch. Hellsmarch is located in northern Skyrim, and the mouth of the Karth River. Morthal lies at the center of the hold. The hold borders Halfingar, separated by the Karth River to the northeast, the Reach to the west, Whiterun to the south, and the Pale to the east. Much of the terrain is covered in wetlands, marshes, and swamps. Collectively known as the Shraegamur March, one of the largest ancient Nordic ruins in Skyrim, Labyrinthian is located in the southern part of the hold, which we visited, and we got our the Eye of Magnus, then a bunch of stuff. The mask that we have that gives us the extra magical power. Morthal. Morthal is a small city at the southern edge of the Drekmere Marsh between Fort Snowhawk and Stonehills Mining Village. Is situated in the off-path river from River Hajal, which starts from the White Run Hold and ends up around the Karth River, where it meets the Sea of Ghosts. Morthar's folk traditions include a legend about the Pale Lady, a dangerous ghost who is said to stalk the marshes to find her daughter. The Rift. The Rift is located in the southeastern part of Skyrim, and the Morthal is where we avenged that little girl that died because her father was turned into a vampire thrall, and her mother was turned into a vampire. The Rift. The Rift is located in the southeast part of Skyrim. It features autumnal forest ringed by mountains. The lower half of the region is known as the Stony Basin, containing mining settlements as the Shores Stone and Fort Greenwall. The elevation rises closer to the capital city of Riften. The hold bordered on the west by mountains adjacent to the throat of the world. Just east of these is Lake Gear, a source of food for the surrounding settlements, including Iverstead, Nimbleton, and German's Hall. German, I think, is no. I mean, all right. I don't think it's so. I think it is. Yeah. Oh, look, there's a lot of information on it anyway. In the southeast of Rift is the Smokefrost Peak subregion, which is warmed by, I think it might have been the Forbidden Legend. No, it's Gelder, not German, which is warmed by the location nearby volcano Trollhättan. The Valoy Mountain stands to the east. The city of Riften is also found there, built on the shores of Lake Honrich. Riften, we went there, and that's where the guards tried to, the whole city is thieves and corrupt, and that's where the Thieves Guild is. And right off the bat, when we tried to enter the city, the guards tried to collect a fee of entry, which was, they were just trying to loot, fool us, rob us. Riften, also known as Riften, also known as Riften, is the capital of the Rift. The town is located southeastern Skyrim, close to the province's border with both Cyrodiil and Morrowind, on the eastern shore of Lake Honrich, home of the Skyrim's Thieves Guild. It was Riften that Berenzai joined the guild during her return to Morrowind from exile in Skyrim. The city's outskirts are primarily farmland, utilized mainly by the Nords of the Snowshod clan and other ancestral families of the Rift. A canal runs through Riften where fishing skiffs took their ships to sell produce. Larger vessels utilized the Riften docks and the outside city walls. Hafengar is the smallest hold in the area. Located in the northwest of the province, since the 4th era, the High King of Skyrim is seated in the wealthy city of Solitude. So that's kind of near where we live. Because Solitude is the imperial city, and we actually have a view of it from our house. The hold is separated from Jarl's Marsh by the Karth River and the Reach by mountains. The Dragon Bridge is the only access to the hold by road. Crossing the Karth River, much of the hold is rocky and mountainous, with soaring snowy mountains and surrounding the north and west of Solitude through the lower lying areas, including the Dragon Bridge. We've been to the Dragon Bridge when we were trying to find the Moth Priest for the Elder Scroll. Are mostly comprised of forests and hills, and it's pretty cool looking. Solitude. Solitude is the center of imperial influence within Skyrim and the capital city of Hafengar. That sounds vaguely Scandinavian. That's as close as I'm going to get. The capital city of Solitude is one of the largest cities in Skyrim. It's set upon a great stone arch that towers above the mouth of the Karth River and is bordered by mountains to the north. The Bard's College and elaborate blue palace are located here, as well as a large temple of divines. In addition to natural defenses, Solitude's outer gate is fortified by the Sky Tower. Solitude is a major port, and its ships control much of Skyrim's northern coastline. Solitude's Bard's College is known for its liveliness, including annual week of celebrations, the climax of which burning of King Olaf in effigy, possibly now a forgotten contender in the War of Succession. Graduates have no trouble finding employment in noble households across Tamriel, and many take to becoming wandering minstrels and providing entertainment in courts across Tamriel. I do have to say that the Skyrim seems to have appreciation in music because every tavern we go in, there's a bard. Whiterun Hold is the central hold of Skyrim. It is named for its capital city, Whiterun. It features a wide variety of geographical features, including vast plains, snow-capped mountains, including the Throat of the World, which is the tallest mountain in all Tamriel. The monastery of the High Hrothgar, Hrothgar is also situated in the mountains. Whiterun Hold is the hub of trading and the core part of the province's economy. Other notable settlements in the hold include Riverwood, Rorikstead. The hold is divided by the White River, leading from Lake Elnalta and the Valkyrie Fold to the south. The local giant population uses grasslands and tundra outside Whiterun as pasture for their mammoth herds, and a place to set camp, such as Bleakwind Basin. Whiterun. The plains of Whiterun is home to the city's shops and market, while the distinct Wind District is the most residential district. The Jarl's Palace, Dragonreach, dominates the Cloud District. Located in the central part of the hold, the area around the city of Whiterun is very open, stretching far to the sundered hills of the Reach. The hill known as Skyforge was the foundation of Whiterun's construction. The city had been grown around it since its discovery by the 500 companions. Thus, I think why the companions are big in like a fighting organization in Whiterun, probably tribute to the historical companions. Drawbridge protecting its western and only gate. The city is divided into 3 districts: the Mercantile Plains District, the Residential and Wealthier Wind District, and the Upper Cloud District, made up of the Palace of Dragonreach. The city contains Gildergreen, an ancient tree that grew from the Eldergleam tree of Eastmarch. Winterhold, that's where our college is. Winterhold is located in the northeastern coast of Skyrim. The sea goes to its north. It is a cold region largely covered in tundra and high mountain ranges. Along the coast is a polar environment of glaciers and icebergs. The surrounding holds are Eastmarch to the south and the Pale to the west. Its hold is home to the College Winterhold. Winterhold, which is our college. Winterhold, sometimes known as the Winterhold, is one of the 4 oldest holds in Skyrim, known collectively as Old Holmes, and was once the province's capital. I wonder why it was so epic. So yeah, a little bit of history is the college we live in was the original capital of the Altmarons, later who became the Nords. That's their first capital is where what the college is now. Like how, like a lot of some very prestigious universities are their building is old monasteries because that's where universities began. And was once the province capital. In 4th Era 122, the city was diminished greatly in size due to the environmental change known as the Great Collapse. Although the college Winterhold was left unharmed, with only one connecting road, Winterhold is one of the most isolated cities in the province. Eastmarch. Eastmarch is located along the eastern border with Morrowind, separated from its neighbor by the Vellothi Mountains. The northern part of the Eastmarch features snowy tundras and mountains, while the central and southern areas of the holds are volcanically active and contain a number of sulfur pools called Alto. The western part resembles much of central Skyrim. The Darkwater River runs through the region near Fort Amal and Darkwater Crossing. It continues to the north, following the White River. The ancient monastery of Mistwatch is home of the Tyrian monks, who are some of the few worshippers of the ancient Nordic pantheon that still exists in Skyrim. Eastmarch's capital city, Windhelm, is located along the Jorgrim River in the northern part of the hold before the boreal forests that inhabit the central province. Many settlements like Lower Jorgrim live under the river, feeding off its fish. To the south, its the sacred forest of Kinesgrove. To the east, connecting the city of Blacklight and Morrowind, is the Dunmap Path. The Icewind Peaks subregion is highly mountainous, featuring only a few small settlements, such as the city of Craigswallow and the ruins of Muzzolf. Was one of the biggest Dwemer cities in Skyrim. The Muzzolf was where we aligned. We used the Oculary to assemble to take care of the orb that we collected to like prevent the destruction of the world. Summits. Windhelm was the first. The ruined temple of Skaldefin sits high above the lofty mountains, containing a portal to Sovngarde, the Nordic afterlife. Interesting. Wonder if we'll deal with that eventually, probably. Windhelm. Windhelm was once the capital of the First Empire of Skyrim. But as of the Fourth Era, it was once the capital of the First Empire of Skyrim, but as the Fourth Era, it was the capital city of Eastmarch. The palace of Ysgramor dynasty still dominates the center of the old city. Windhelm was sacked during the War of Succession, and again by the Akavari army. It is a little run down. Of Adosun and Dir Kamal, the Palace of Kings is one of the first few empire buildings that remain. In the Second and Third Era, Windhelm was only a sizable city in the hold of Eastmarch and served as a base for Imperial troops guarding the Dunmap Pass into Morrowind during Hyper Septim's reign. On the Great War and ensuing Skyrim Civil War, Windhelm became the primary hold of the Stormcloaks. The city's proximity to the Sea of Ghosts allows its status as a lucrative trading post. The city can be accessed through its docks or across a stone bridge crossing the Yogrim River. The city is split into several districts: the Mercantile Stone Quarter, the Residential Snow Quarter, or the Grey Quarter, as of the Fourth Era, and the wealthier quarter of Volmstrad. Bleak Rock Isle. Bleak Rock Isle is north of Dunmer City of Blacklight and northeast of Windhelm. The ruling capital and the small island is Bleak Rock Village, which is the only real settlement in Bleak Rock. There are a few Nordic ruins located on the isle, including a massive ruins known as the Sky Shroud Barrow. Bleak Rock Village has a set of ruins to the southeast of it called Last Rest. Southwest of Bleak Rock Village is a monument called the Companion's Point, which depicts Ysgramor of the 500 companions. Rosecree is an island that was conquered by Uriel Septim V in Third Era, 271, is located in the Sea of Ghosts. It was the first of four known islands conquered by Septim and his expeditionary force. According to records, it took his armies roughly 3 years to conquer the island. The island was later annexed by Solitude. Government. I'm just kind of curious where we're at. Okay, we got it now. Here. The government. Maw unleashing razor snow of dragons from blue brought down. Births of walking winter's woe. The High King and his jagged crown. Wow, that's terrible. I'm guessing the jagged crown is made up of the teeth of the dragons. It's wild guess. Maw unleashing razor snow of dragons from the blue brought down. Burst the walking winter's woe. The High King in his jagged crown. Yes. Indeed. The jagged crown is a symbol of power for the rulers of Skyrim. The entire province of Skyrim is ruled by the High King or High Queen and their consort. Each hold is ruled by a Jarl. Following the death of King Harald, the High King was chosen through a moot of Jarls, which varied in importance from the ultimate legitimizer of a High King's rule to a mere ceremonial acknowledgement of the heir apparent. Disagreements over the moot in the First Era led to the War of Succession, and First Era 369, and after that, the moot has only been convened when the current High King has no direct heir. So basically, the High King it's a monarchy, and it's the king just passes it on to his heirs, the heir to the throne. And if there's no heir, then the jarls will convene in a more democratic fashion and try to elect someone. Let's see. Until the Skyrim Civil War, the province was included in the Emperor of Tamriel, while under his banner, Skyrim enjoyed military aid from the Emperor's army. The Jagged Crown was a symbol of leadership and the power of a high king or queen. It was made out of the teeth of the bones of dragons. It was an ancient relic of the Nords. It was made for King Harald. The last king to wear the crown was King Borgus, and the crown was lost during the War of Succession. There are no laws or legal documents of Skyrim. There were some surveys, censuses, and records used by the government, such as the Book of Life, which is a census that kept track of people and livestock in a certain region. The government also kept records of cities' general status and economic production. One such survey was the survey of the holdings of Jarl Jutland, taken during the First Era by Salfkner, the scribe under the rule of Yaland. Armed forces. Other than the Imperial Legion and the Stormcloaks, Skyrim appears to have no centralized armed forces. Each hold has its own section of hold guards who act as both National Guard and police force. These soldiers are the first line of defense against any opposing force who threatens Skyrim and its people. All hold guards were Legion soldiers prior to the Civil War and were able to be conscripted by the Empire in times of war. After the Civil War erupted, sometime after Markarth incident, the hold guards of Skyrim were divided, just as Skyrim itself was. Halfingar, Jarl's March, the Reach, and Falkreath hold remaining under Imperial control, and Eastmarch, the Pale, the Rift, and Winterhold changing to Stormcloak control. The hold guards and all armed forces are under the command of their respective Jarl, the 9 holds, which are largely independent. However, in theory, all Jarls must swear fealty to the Skyrim's High King, who can unify the Hold's armed forces into a centralized army. The Nord's warlike character and history of conflict contributed much to Skyrim's formidable reputation. As an ally of the Emperor, it was also considered to be the Emperor's strong arm. Economy. Skyrim is a wealthy and powerful province, traditionally was a profitable trading partner of the Third Empire. In the Fourth Era, Skyrim was politically unified under the outbreak of the Civil War, which pitted the Eastern Holds against the Western Holds. Although this, coupled with the Great Collapse, has caused some damage to Skyrim's economy. The city of Riften has become an industrial powerhouse, producing meat and fish. Skyrim also has an abundant variety of wildlife that's hunted as prey by local hunters, which we run into a lot of hunters on our journeys. These animals are hunted for their meat and pelts, which can be sold or utilized for cooking and leather crafting. There are many forms of economic production in Skyrim. This includes agriculture, which is common despite there are many farms, grain mills, mines, lumber mills, docks, and ports that produce goods and services. In addition, the trading and shipping business industries are another part of Skyrim's economy. Each major city in Skyrim, of which there are 5, there's a central marketplace where business, trading, and social activities take place. Some cities, towns, and villages produced specific goods and services. During the First Era, Rorikstead produced grain, leather, and horses. Corvinsjon produced hides and meat. Voldrad produced meat and worked ivory. Bromjunar produced lumber and stone. Granite Hill held a weekly market, and Hilgrunsteding. The East Empire Company is a multinational, monopolistic trading and shipping company based out of Cyrodiil. The East Empire Company essentially dominates the shipping and trading industry in Solitude, which is a major shipping port out of Skyrim. However, the East Empire Company has been having troubles with the Blood Horker pirates, who are used by the clan Shattershield to diminish the flow of Imperial goods to Skyrim, which in turn enabled clan Shattershield's trading and shipping business to rival them in Windhelm. Okay, so yeah, there are two ports, and each are controlled. One is Stormcloak, one is Imperial, and that's very key to controlling the economic resources of the nation. So, or the country, I should say. So, like who rules Skyrim will largely revolve around who controls trade outside of the country. So, if both ports, if one of the ports falls to the other group, that will give them a lot of dominance. Skyrim uses Septim, which is the main currency used in Cyrodiil throughout all of the Empire. Religion. There are two religious pantheons in Skyrim, both worshipped in different time periods throughout Skyrim's history. The first was the ancient Nordic pantheon, worshipped through the Myrthic and First Era. The ancient Nordic pantheon venerated animal gods. The deities were the hawk, wolf, snake, moth, owl, whale, bear, fox, and the dragon. Okay, that makes sense. All the temples we've gone in, all the ruins in Skyrim, there's some puzzle that involved those animals. So that makes a lot more sense. Which scholars equate to the nine divines in different forms. The second was the Nordic pantheon, revered during the rest of Skyrim's history prior to the Fourth Era. During the Fourth Era, they adopted the Imperial pantheon, and that's where a lot of the tension comes in. The Nordic pantheon consists of various deities resembling the nine divines. Specific deities were venerated by Skyrim and her peoples, including Shor, Sun, Kain, Mara, Dibella, Orki, Junel, Aldun, and Ysmir. These deities were divided into several groups that represent the different stages of the world. And we can build a little statue that we can get blessings from, our lowercase g's from this pantheon there. So as the traditional Nordic, the not the super traditional, but the more modern, I guess, Nordic deities, not the animals, but actual, like kind of like the Greek pantheon or the Norse pantheon of mythological gods. These deities were divided into several groups that represent the different stages of the world. Shor and Tazum formed the group known as the Dead Gods, who fought and died in order to bring about the current world. Kain, Mara, and Dibella, and Stun, and Jounel formed the group known as the Hearth Gods, who watch over the current world. Aldun, the Twilight God, who ushers in the next world. And I think the dragon, the head of the dragon was named Aldun as well. Or Adun, maybe. Orki, I thought Orki was Orc God, along with Hermamora and Moloch, formed the group called the Testing Gods, which the Nord guard against rather than worship. Okay. Shor is considered to be a father deity of the province, as opposed to Akatosh, the chief divine of Cyrodiil. While most pantheons consider the time god to be head of the pantheon, the Nordic pantheon is led by Kain. Some scholars report that Akatosh and Aldun are the same deity, while others disagree. Some guards believe to be the Nordic afterlife created by Shor. So it's like Ragnarok, kind of. If the Nord dies heroic and honorable death, they will ascend to Sovngarde. Daedra worship is rare in Skyrim, although traditional Nordic pantheon acknowledges some of these beings. These include Hermamora, the Atmoran demon who some claim is the incarnation of the Daedric prince Hermaeus Mora, which we encountered. I think he's the god of knowledge, the Daedric prince of knowledge. And Moloch. That sounds too much like Moloch, which is like a Sumerian ancient the owl god, or I forget. Incarnation of Malakath is the patron of the ostracized. Other Daedric princes are worshipped in Skyrim by those who do not follow predominant faiths. In the province, these include Azura, whose followers fled Morrowind after receiving spiritual dreams from their liege, Nocturnal, worshipped by the Nightingales, Namura, worshipped by a cult of cannibals, Hircine, largely patronized by lycanthropes, so wolf people, werewolves. Talos worship. Worship Talos is prevalent in Skyrim despite the signing of the White Gold Concord of the Thalamor and the Third Empire as a treaty to the Great War conflict. The document contains explicit demands by the Third Altmeri Dominion to uproot the worship of Talos and Cyrodiil and all of its territory. Skyrim, at the time, was a territory of the Empire. Following the Markarth incident, the Thalmor were authorized to eradicate Talos worship in Skyrim, which I think is a lot of why the Civil War is rooted in that the Thalmor are using the Imperials to push their gods on the Nord, who already have the gods that they worship. Um, to eradicate Talos worship in Skyrim, though the Stormcloaks refused to relinquish these beliefs. Sometime after the Concordant was signed into law, the Shrine of Talos and the Divines was desecrated and removed. So tensions. Culture. Music. Many songs are found in Skyrim's culture. Some notable songs include Ragnar the Red. We've heard that one in like every inn. The Song of the Dragonborn. Dragonborn comes. I imagine that's like will be happen when we do the Dragonborn quests. The Tale of Tongues. Music is also popular in relation to war and propaganda. In the 3rd century of the 4th era, when the Civil War was taking place, 2 songs were produced, which lyrics altered to suit each side. The Age of Aggression was for the Empire, and the Age of Oppression was for the Stormcloaks. These songs are sung by bards in inns and taverns all across Skyrim. One very notable song was of the past was King Olaf's verse. The verse, written by Bard Simbakar, criticized the King Olaf One-Eye and his adventures, and referred to his adventures as lurid and false. In response, King Olaf the One-Eye ordered Simbakar to be imprisoned and all copies of his verse to burn. In 4th era 201, the last Dragonborn joined the Bard's College, which we haven't done yet. Their initiation task was to retrieve the last known copy of King Olaf's verse. Spoiler alert. Queen Elizabeth the Fair banned the burning of King Olaf. Festival of Bard's College after the death of her husband, Torad. She considered it to be in bad taste. The Bards, however, desired for the festival to take place. Remember, the last Dragonborn went to Elisith the Fair and presented her King Olaf's verse. Elisith soon allowed the holding of the burning of King Olaf festival. The festival was to be held that day, and all days in the future the festival was to take place. Festivals and holidays. A few notable holidays and festivals are customary in Skyrim and Nordic culture. One notable festival is the Feast of the Dead, which is held at the 13th of the sun's dawn in Wenholm to honor Ysgramor and the 500 companions. During the festival, the names of the 500 are recited. Architecture and infrastructure. The architecture and infrastructure of Skyrim is a mix of rural and urban. It's mostly rural, I would say. There's like Windhelm and Solitude are like the only 2 cities, and I guess Markarth, we haven't been to Markarth yet, are the only 3 cities that seem to be really gentrified. I guess Whiterun has a structure to it, but I would not call like their cities to be like very urban, other than Windhelm and Solitude. And I would say that like they don't have like a lot of cities everywhere. There's some small towns and there's a handful of cities, and it's mostly rural, I would say. There's a lot of there's a lot of places dotted around the map, but it's not. It's like in Oblivion, you had the Empire City, and it was huge, and it was this massive city. And you don't get that in Skyrim, which makes more sense because Skyrim is they're a little more down to earth, and they almost build their cities around nature. Architecture and infrastructure of Skyrim is a mix of rural and urban. Much of Skyrim is untamed wilderness, broken up by 9 major cities, spread across the province. Of these 9 cities, there are 5 that are more urbanized, heavily populated, and more city-like, and 4 that are smaller, less populated, and more rural in nature. The actual architecture of the city buildings vary, but is known what they are based on. The city of Markarth was originally built by the ancient Dwemer. The buildings were made of stone and unique metal only known to the Dwemer, the dwarves. After the Dwemer disappeared in first era 700, the people started to settle into Markarth, so the Nords who settled the city did not have to use their cultural styles of architecture and infrastructure. Examples of ancient Nordic architecture include longhouses. We see a lot of longhouses, each beam and cornice festooned with carvings of dragons, bulls, boars, leering wild men, and dancing long-tressed women. The ancient Nords, known as the Atmorans, built massive structures called word walls. Whether it's out of fear or respect, the ancient Nords learned the language and writing of the system of the dragons, which we encounter throughout the game. We gain a shout of power, which we're going to have to incorporate here, especially when we get into the dragon quests. There are several examples of Akabari architecture present in Skyrim. Sometime during the First Era, Sky's Haven Temple was constructed for and by the Akabari Dragon Guard, and First Era, 2812, Emperor Remnan II permitted the construction of Aldun's Wall in the temple. The massive stone mural built to record all of Akabari's accumulated dragon lore and the prophecy of the Dragonborn, which is our character. Sky Haven Temple and Aldun's Wall are testaments to Akabari architecture and sculpturing, and is considered to be some of the best preserved examples of early Akabari structures and sculptures. 3 colleges are recorded as existing in Skyrim throughout its history: the Imperial College of the Voice in Markarth, the Bard's College in Solitude, the College of Winterhold. Tiber Septon endowed a college in Markarth to begin teaching the voice as a tool of war. But whether this college began teaching it or not is unclear. There's no trace of the college in any of the games. Interesting. Alright, gang, so we have a good solid background of Skyrim, the people there, the flora, the fauna, the politics, the city, the religion, a little bit of everything. So, at any rate, I greatly appreciate you guys taking some time with me to learn more about the game that we're playing, and hopefully will immerse us in the story a little bit better. I wish you guys the best the 4th of July, and I will see you guys again soon.